My next guest, though, has good news for you, and so I'm happy to have him on. He's a sports announcer, a Breitbart columnist, and host of the Palin Update on Serenet Radio. Welcome to the Dr. Gina Show, Kevin Scholla.
What's up, Doc? How you been?
Yeah, I am good. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I love the accent. It's always good to hear you. So one of the things I have to cover quickly, you and I went through a bit of a trench together, and that was we thought Sarah Palin was going to run for president, and we were all in last time around. And then I don't know about you, but I remember where I was as if it were a national tragedy the day that I found out that Sarah Palin, I was on air in studio and was devastated, blindsided by the announcement that she wasn't going to run. Any chance you think she's going to run for president this time?
Well, you know, I was asked this question the other day, too, and this is something like you mentioned. I remember where I was, too. I was about to go on the air. I remember the date. It was October 5th, and it was, you know, it was rough. But, you know, I haven't really thought about that as much this time around, maybe largely because of that. But I do know she's going to do the right thing one way or another. And we have, you know, we have a fish to fry before that, being 2014. And she has talked greatly about those elections coming up. And also some states right now in 2013 with big races, like Virginia has a gubernatorial and a lieutenant governor's race. So there's a lot to do before them. But, you know, if she does, that would be wonderful. If she doesn't, we know she'll be out there for the right person.
So your thoughts on who she might support if she chooses not to run for president? I've been hearing her compliment Rand Paul now and then. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, she's been a big supporter of Rand Paul.
Which is very interesting considering her love for the military.
Well, I guess we'd have to see who runs. I mean, obviously, she's a huge Ted Cruz supporter. You know, we'd have to see who would be on that list. I just hope it's not that list that we hear. I mean, have we still not learned from the McCain and Romney types? You still hear from the establishment names like Bush and Rubio and Christie. I mean, that would be enough to say, you know, what would we do then? I mean, we're going to try for a trifecta here. You may as well hand it over.
Exactly.
So let's hope it's a conservative. Let's hope it's someone who, you know, believes in the principles that Governor Palin and folks like yourself have been fighting for. Well, you know, as far as Rand Paul, you mentioned, you know, military. I mean, remember, this isn't Ron Paul. This is Rand Paul. So it is different to an extent.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, some interesting things are happening culturally, and we all know, as Andrew Breitbart said, and as Governor Palin has said many times, that culture leads the way on our politics. And one of the interesting things that's happened, Ashton Kutcher saying, and I hope I'm even saying his name right. I am so not Hollywood that it's not even funny. But he said some things about hard work in a recent award ceremony in Hollywood. It almost sounded darn near free enterprise-esque. What do you think is going on there?
Well, he did, and I think, and the other part to mention here is the speech was to the Teen Choice Awards.
Oh, right,
I believe.
That's important. Yes, it was to young people who have a reputation for being quite lazy these days.
Right.
Yeah.
Or also, you know, maybe, you know, are listening to these celebrities or whatnot. And so, you know, a lot of people said that perhaps the message sounded similar to something Steve Jobs has said in the past. And now that he's playing the role of Steve Jobs in a movie, it may have been partially at least a ploy to say, hey, come see my film.
The
you know what
occurs.
Well, you know what?
Yeah, it's funny.
I took from that, I said, who cares? If the message is to young kids, you know, 9 to 13 or whatever the age group is there, and they're walking out of there hearing hard work is good, then that's a good thing that he said it from that standpoint.
Yeah.
And let's make no mistake, you know, Kutcher is, well, let's talk about his pros first. He is a Bears fan, so I like that. But he is definitely a liberal. I mean, he's given the many liberal causes. He's an Obama guy. I saw him on Bill Maher's show a few years back say things critical about Governor Palin. Yet Governor Palin and Bristol Palin spoke out in favor of his comments. So not only do I like what he said, but I love how the Palins backed him despite maybe his ideology or what he has said in the past. It shows that they will take the high road and compliment you when you do something well, even if, say, you've said things in the past that they don't agree with, or even at you. I mean, when have we seen this from a liberal? You know, if Sarah Palin cured cancer and AIDS tomorrow, I highly doubt Janine Garofalo would still give her credit for it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, another thing happening in our culture that's been very interesting is this whole Duck Dynasty leading the way. I have to be honest with you, and I know you and I are going to disagree on this. Kevin, I don't get it. I'm sorry. I just don't get it. And I love guns. And I respect hunting. Not a big hunter, but I do love shooting. And the beards, I'm worried about what lurks in there.
You know, my daughter sees, you know, she's 5 and, you know, doesn't watch the show, but in the mall there's a T-shirt with all the beards on it, and she sees the thing with the beard, so it's very recognizable, and they definitely have branded the thing well. You're not the first person who said that to me. You know, I mean, it is a lot of silliness in the program, a lot of laughs for some people and whatnot, but they're definitely very popular. I know a lot of people who watch it religiously.
You know, I do so respect what they've established, and I respect anyone that will go on television and be exactly who they are, and without it being all about them all the time, and putting reverence and glory where reverence and glory go, which, by the way, isn't on themselves. I love all that. I've tried to watch it, and it's not happening.
Well, you're probably like me from the standpoint that it has to be a perfect fit. You know, I'm not big on reality programs in general, and, you know, when I go and watch something, I really have to be into it to, you know, be a fan, even if you could, you know, respect it from a standpoint. But, you know, I've seen it from time to time. I don't watch it as closely as some, but I know that there's some good folks behind it.
Yeah, absolutely, and they seem to be doing some really important things and turning a bit of the culture. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, well, Phil Robertson, you know, who is the older gentleman on the show, you know, he came out recently and spoke about pro-life issues, and yeah, I mean, this was captured on camera, and it's been all over YouTube and whatnot, and he's been, you know, getting a huge thumbs up from a lot of pro-lifers lately. I mean, he basically, you know, he spoke about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and Andrew Jackson, and talked about how he carries his Bible, and he, you know, he was very emotional, saying you have the God-given right to live, for crying out loud, is what he said.
Yeah.
And you know, this is really, I mean, I know they're not your usual Hollywood where a Kutcher is, but still to have someone who has a prominent place on a major television program to come out there and speak for the unborn is a big deal. It's
a big deal. All right, I loved the story you wrote, and I want to get to that before I have to let you go. I love the story you wrote at Breitbart just a couple of days ago, maybe yesterday. I know my days are running together right now. On something that you follow very closely, and that is, of course, sports. And you were talking about how it is that the Special Olympics sort of can keep a smile on our faces despite all the yuck going on, not just really in politics, but there's a lot of stuff going on in sports too. Talk to us about your column.
Well, thank you, Gina, for saying that. I really appreciate that. And I just had the real privilege earlier this season during a doubleheader to, in between the games, to introduce some Special Olympians. They had their opening summer ceremonies on the field, and I was able to introduce all the kids. They went out and lit a torch just like a regular Olympic ceremony, and then the next few days they had their games. And you know, as I watched it took me a while to get around to actually putting it down on paper, but it was in my head right away. It was just a wonderful event, and to just see how happy these children were out there and competing just like any other child, and you know, it was just really heartwarming, and I just wanted to give them a big thumbs up for doing what they do. You know, like you said, we hear all these headlines today about steroids and autograph scandals, and you know, this patriot who's allegedly killed someone, and you know, you go down the list. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that sports is not supposed to be about, and I just thought this is exactly what sports is about, doing it for the joy, for the love of the game. You know, these kids are never going to be in the NFL or make millions of dollars or do anything with sports other than have a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment and love, and it goes through their whole families and really through the community. And I've been around a lot of teams and a lot of players and whatnot, but I just thought that was a very special night. I'd put it right up there with any big event I've ever covered.
It's awesome, and I know exactly what you're saying, because I my very first time I counseled at a camp for people with developmental disabilities. I did it as a sort of sacrifice to God, because I'd had some real blessings in my life that year, and of course it was returned to me in spades. It was just such a special time that I fell in love with that population, and as you know, ended up working for 10 years to adopt a child with Down syndrome. Not easy to do, because more than 90% of them, of course, are aborted. And I know you had lots of my fellow Downy friends out there in the Special Olympics, and certainly all those people are really, really special. Kevin Scholla, you are a winner. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Dr. Gina, always a pleasure, and thank you very much, and best to everybody on board, your staff, and of course your family, and say hello to the little guy.
We'll do it. Thank you so much. He's actually not so little anymore, is he? He's
well, for you, he's the littlest one.
He is, yeah. He's
chronological order.
There you go. All right, Kevin. Well, thank you so much, and we'll have you back on soon.